Welcome to the channel Masters of Consciousness. In today's episode, we will look at one of the greatest spiritual masters in human history, Siddhartha Gautama, more widely known as Buddha. Today, we will explore not only his life, but, most importantly, the essence of his teachings, which have survived for over 2,500 years and continue to help people around the world find peace, understanding, and a deeper meaning of existence. At the core of his teachings is the understanding of the nature of suffering, observing life and its inextricable aspects, birth, illness, aging, and death. He reached a fundamental conclusion. Life as we know it is inherently linked with suffering. However, this does not mean that suffering is a punishment, that it is evil, or that we must endure it forever. According to his teachings, suffering results from a wrong understanding of reality, desires, and attachments. It is these desires, the desire to possess, to be someone, to avoid discomfort, that are the source of inner unrest. The deep foundation of his philosophy is that everything that exists is impermanent. Things, emotions, relationships, everything comes and goes, changes. There is nothing in this world that lasts forever. Understanding this impermanence allows one to free oneself from attachments, and thus from suffering. For if we do not expect something to stay with us forever, we will not be disappointed when it disappears. The key to liberation from suffering is the so-called Noble Eightfold Path. It is not a set of rules or commandments, but rather a map for living in harmony with oneself and the world. It includes right understanding, right thinking, right speech, right action, right livelihood, effort, mindfulness, and concentration. Each of these elements leads a person towards greater awareness and presence in the moment, and thus freedom from mental bonds. A special role in this path is played by mindfulness, the ability to be fully present here and now, without judgment, without distraction. Mindfulness allows us to see things as they are, without illusions. Through it, we can notice our thought patterns, reactions, emotions, and as a result, stop identifying with them. We are not our anger, fear, or even our bodies. We are something deeper, pure consciousness that observes. This recognition that we are not what passes away leads to inner liberation. It does not mean escaping from life, but rather immersing oneself more deeply into its true nature. When a person stops clinging tightly to things that will anyway pass, they begin to experience true freedom, not the kind that involves doing everything one desires, but the kind that frees from internal compulsions, fears, and the chaos of thoughts. The particular value of this wisdom is its universality. These teachings are not tied to religion, nor do they require belief in any god or system. It is a practice of inner knowing, observing oneself, one's thoughts, emotions, reactions. Through this, one can notice how often we live on autopilot, repeating the same patterns that do not bring us happiness. Only when we consciously begin to observe what happens inside us can we bring about real change. An important aspect of these teachings is also compassion, not as a sentimental feeling, but as a deep, natural response of the heart, which understands the suffering of others because it has gone through similar pain. Compassion is not about pity, but about presence, gentleness, and readiness to bring relief. And although it begins with oneself, it quickly spreads to others, family, friends, and ultimately all sentient beings. Over time, the practice of inner knowing leads to the dissolution of the ego, this artificial construct that says, I, mine, for me. It is precisely the ego that introduces the division between me and the world, between my good and your evil. By dissolving the ego, a person begins to experience a deep sense of unity with everything that exists, not as an idea, but as a living experience. There is then no longer a need to prove one's point, compete, or fight. Instead, a natural state of inner peace emerges. But this is not a path of quick results. These are not techniques that change life in a week. It is a path that requires patience, perseverance, and readiness to confront one's own shadow. However, Every step, even the smallest, bears fruit. Even the shortest moment of true mindfulness can change the way we see the world. Inner awakening is not about adding something to oneself, new beliefs, new identities, but about letting go of what is unnecessary. It is about discovering that at our core we are already complete, that we do not need to seek anything outside to be fulfilled. On this path, it is also very important to understand the nature of thoughts. It is precisely thoughts that create the reality we experience. Most people live in a constant inner dialogue, analyzing the past, worrying about the future, judging themselves and others. This stream of thoughts never ends, and the more we identify with them, the harder it is for us to feel true peace. However, from the perspective of deeper wisdom, thoughts are only phenomena appearing in the mind, like clouds in the sky. They do not need to be suppressed or controlled. It is enough to see that they are not us. They appear, they leave, and the awareness that observes them remains unchanged. This awareness is the true nature of the being, pure presence that does not judge, compare, but sees clearly and calmly. It is precisely through the practice of meditation that it is possible to fully experience this presence. Meditation is not an escape from the world, but a deep encounter with what is here and now. Sometimes calm may appear, other times unrest, pain, boredom. All of this is part of the process. Nothing needs to be changed. It is about being fully, consciously, without resistance. Over time, we begin to notice that things that once threw us off balance lose their power, not because they have changed, but because our way of reacting has changed. We learn internal stability that does not depend on external conditions. It is a great freedom when our happiness is no longer dependent on other people, on situations or circumstances. However, this path does not end with personal development. When the inner fire truly starts to burn, a natural need arises to share this light with others, not in the form of proselytizing or instructing, but as a subtle presence that inspires, sets an example, and reminds others of their own inner light. Because every person has the potential for awakening within them, everyone can find silence, clarity, and deep peace. Importantly, this path excludes nothing. You can walk it as a parent, teacher, artist, or doctor. There is no need to give up life or relationships. On the contrary, these teachings teach how to be more present, more conscious, and more compassionate in the world. As a result, everything becomes practice. A conversation with a loved one, a walk, a meal, work. Every moment is an opportunity for awakening. Inner awakening does not mean the end of challenges, but a complete change in approach to them. Instead of fighting reality, we learn to cooperate with it. Instead of reacting automatically, we begin to respond consciously. We stop seeing the world as something to be fixed, gained, or defeated. Instead, we learn to see it as it is, perfect in its imperfection. This leads to a deep sense of acceptance of oneself, others, difficult moments, and beautiful moments. It's not about passive surrender, but about accepting reality without fighting or resistance. Only then can we truly start acting from a place of wisdom, not from fear or the desire for control. One of the deepest lessons of this path is that true happiness does not depend on what we have, but on who we are inside. When we no longer seek happiness externally, we begin to discover its source within ourselves, not in the future, not in other people, not in fulfilled ambitions, but in peaceful being here and now. And it is this presence, pure, quiet, and deep, that all teachings lead to recognizing that we are already what we seek, that nothing more is needed to be fulfilled. It is enough to be aware, to breathe, to see, to feel, to love. For love, compassion, wisdom, and peace are not something to be acquired. They are something that already exists within us, something that only waits for us to remove the curtains of illusion, desires, and fears. When this happens, a deep silence appears, not as a lack of sound, but as fullness. A silence in which there is no need to speak, prove, or achieve anything. In this silence, there is an answer. Thank you for being with us in today's episode of Masters of Consciousness. We hope that this journey through the teachings of Buddha, their depth, simplicity, and timeless wisdom, was inspiring and helpful for you. If you felt even a little peace, if a moment of pause and reflection appeared within you, it is a sign that the inner doors are beginning to open. We encourage you to continue on this path, at your own pace, with kindness towards yourself and the world. Subscribe to the channel if you want to discover more sources of spiritual wisdom with us. And in the next episode, we will explore the teachings of another great master whose message has the power to transform lives. See you soon. Be present. Be the light.